Today we're going to take a look at the server-based solutions with our partner Secure Logiq, who put together custom units specifically for the 𝐂𝐸𝐸 VMS for us, and also the IPMI solutions as well for the workstations. My name's Nathan Garner. I'm the Technical Pre-Sales and Project Manager here at Dynamic CCTV. And I've also got Ben Yoxall and Robin Hughes from Secure Logiq, and today as well it's going to be going through some of the capabilities of the RAID technologies and some more in-depth details on Secure Logiq as a company, and also what kind of offerings that they have with the different hardware that we supply from them, and we'll be taking a look at that with them as well later on today. I'm going to be going through kind of what is a server-based management system, specifically from point of view of from Hikvision side of things with the 𝐂𝐸𝐸 VMS platforms, but there are other applications which Secure Logiq definitely know a lot more than I do about those. But we're going to be taking a look at the benefits of those, also the server-based recordings using server-based record servers that we do supply as well. And then we're going to take a look at the benefits of using RAID with server-based systems. Ben and Robin will cover in more in depth, and also why you should choose Dynamic CCTV and Secure Logiq to help with those projects that are needing these kind of solutions, or where you're needing that extra support from us as well. So with a server-based management system, you usually have a centralized server. Sometimes these may be distributed servers depending on the size of the system. So that one server can manage multiple devices across different sites or across the same site, dependent on the solution that you're looking at. So we do have systems where they may have multiple recorders spread across a building, and they need to be able to manage that from one location, or to be able to administer it from one PC going out to the different sites, or from multiple PCs, depending on the site that they're looking at. Within 𝐂𝐸𝐸, you have the ability to remotely manage different sites as well. So you can actually add in, for an example, a recorder in London when your base is in the Northeast, for example. And within that, you need the hardware to actually run that back-end VMS server solution, in which case ours are provided by Secure Logiq. We've had these custom built by them specifically for the 𝐂𝐸𝐸 platform. So this gives us the ability to meet all the requirements of the actual software itself and allow our customers to be able to use the full capabilities of the system. So within a single server solution with one of the web servers and the 𝐂𝐸𝐸 platform, you can have up to 3,000 cameras added to one server. If you then went even larger for a distributed server using two of the web servers, you can actually go up to 10,000 cameras added to a single system for management, and that can allow you to have multiple users connecting in at once, or to be able to distribute your settings across all those different sites from one location. So this makes it a lot easier to administrate across multiple PCs. So with standalone software solutions such as IPMI 4200, if you have a new camera or recorder that needs adding into the software, you've got to go around each and every one of those PCs and add in that device. Whereas with a server-based solution, you're just doing it through the administrative portal of the actual server itself, and that then applies out to the specific users that have those permissions to be able to access that system. So it's a lot easier to manage and a lot easier to add in and remove new devices depending on the system as well. Within that, you also have the ability to have multiple operators. So specifically with the 𝐂𝐸𝐸 VMS, you can actually have up to 100 clients connecting to a single server at the same time. So that's 100 people logged in at once, being able to administrate or view cameras, etc. from the actual server itself. And also within using server-based management system, you can have full accountability with the audit logs and the audit trails. So you can actually see exactly what each and every user has done with the system, whether or not a device has had any settings changed, who's viewed it, who's digitally zoomed, anything like that is all logged on the actual server itself from there. So 𝐂𝐸𝐸 as a platform is a licensed CMS, which I'm sure a lot of us have all become familiar with now, especially over the recent years since it's been released. So this gives you the ability to have advanced alarm and event handling as well as the ability to have multiple users and clients stream cameras either on the local site that your server is or remotely across multiple different sites, but still connecting to the one server that will actually manage everything on the system. And it is a fully customizable solution as well. So if the software itself couldn't do what you need it to do for a site, there is the ability to have that customized in a way so it meets your requirements that you need for the actual system. And this does allow you to integrate with third-party systems now using the Optimus middleware software, which is also compatible with the web servers as well from Secure Logiq, which will allow you to add in third-party devices into the 𝐂𝐸𝐴 VMS, such as Paxton, Galaxy Alarm panels. There's also a multitude of different connectors that will becoming available this year, which will allow you to add in more third-party systems. So you can have one centralized CMS solution that's managing everything across one site or across multiple sites. So you're not having to switch between different softwares. It's basically a one-stop solution for you to be able to manage that entire system on the site. So within the architecture, when used specifically for Hikvision, we have the main 𝐂𝐸𝐴 server, which would run on the HC web server, which is specifically designed to actually run the 𝐂𝐸𝐴 backend. There's also then as well the RSM server. So this allows you to manage multiple 𝐂𝐸𝐴 servers. So if you have, for example, a group of academies, in each academy you may have a 𝐂𝐸𝐴 solution running on one of the web servers, and then at the headquarters you need to be able to remotely manage all those different sites, and that's where the RSM software comes into play, and that would also run on one of the web servers as well from that. So you have that scalability dependent on what the requirements are for the actual site itself. Within that, usually a lot of customers now have grown accustomed to using DVRs and NVRs for storage requirements, but there is actually a server-based storage solution which works in conjunction with 𝐂𝐸𝐴 called Keystore, which runs on the storage servers that are available through us that have been built by Secure Logiq, and those can be customized depending on the different types of RAID that you require for the site and the different levels of storage that are required as well. I'm going to take a look at in a bit more detail in a moment for those. So a lot of people always ask if they actually need to use a server-based solution. A lot of people are used to using the IPMI 4200, which is the free client software that's available from Hikvision. That's fine when using as a standalone kind of one PC where you need to administrate systems from, or you only need one person to be able to view the cameras. But if you need to be able to have multiple clients being able to connect in, or multiple users, 𝐂𝐸𝐴 as a server-based solution is the best all-round solution to be able to do that, and it gives you the scalability as well within the system, and it does give you additional features that just aren't available in the standalone software that's running on a PC. A lot of this has to be done on a server to be able to handle the actual different events and everything that are coming through, and to be able to manage everything all in one go as well. So within 𝐂𝐸𝐴, you can have up to 10,000 cameras, 50,000 persons. So the persons relate to access control within the system itself. So you can have up to 50,000 people added into one company within the 𝐂𝐸𝐴 server, and you can manage up to 1,024 doors per 𝐂𝐸𝐴 solution on a web server as well. So it gives you that scalability and the capacity to be able to run the larger systems and to be able to manage it as efficiently as possible as well within that. So Secure Logiq put together the HC web server for us that we sell and do stock these as well. So the actual operating system of the server is Windows based, but it's actually installed on RAIDed drives that have been put together by Secure Logiq. So this gives you the redundancy. If one of the drives fails, your server's not going to fall over. You've still got that system up and running, and you can then contact ourselves or Secure Logiq for replacement SSD for the actual server itself, so you're not having any downtime on site. A lot of other servers, they mainly don't have the operating system on SSDs or running in RAID either. So the benefits of the SSDs are obviously the faster boot up times and the general faster use when you're actually using the server itself. But with SSDs, generally they don't last as long as standard hard drives. But with RAID, we've got that failover and redundancy within the actual system itself. So it is a lot less of an issue and generally performs a lot better than other servers that we've seen running the High Central platform. And that's testament to kind of the know-how and the build from Secure Logiq themselves. Within these, there's also free software that's sent out with Secure Logiq servers called Logical Health Check Pro, which does allow you to be able to check the health status of the different servers that you have deployed, and that's available free on the servers that are actually sold by us from Secure Logiq. It's being custom built as software program by Secure Logiq themselves. So that's the management side of things when it comes to the servers. For the recording side, it's using a software called Keystore. So this is used on a server-based storage system, which we have our HC storage servers that Secure Logiq put together to match the requirements of the software specifically for the Hikvision solutions. So this allows you to have larger storage volumes centrally, or you can actually deploy them across multiple remote sites as well. So if, for example, you had different offices, each with a recorder in, if that recorder is stolen, you've got no backups of the footage. But with Keystore and on one of the storage servers, you can actually schedule it so every night it'll upload all the footage from those remote NVRs and DVRs back to the centralized server. And so if there's anything goes wrong on the site, a recorder's stolen, you still have backups of all that footage recorded centrally. The hardware servers themselves have capacity for high bandwidth, a lot higher bandwidth than you get with your standard NVRs, DVRs, and also in some cases higher than the IP SAN units that's available as well. So we can scale those solutions depending on what's needed for the site. The hardware can be adapted when there is the need for the higher bandwidth, the higher resolution cameras, or the higher amounts of cameras as well for those. Another thing to mention as well with the actual storage servers themselves, they do have redundancy built in. So the actual storage for the video is on RAID, which can be RAID 5, RAID 50, whatever you need for the site, that can be done within the system. And the same is for the operating system for the actual servers themselves. Those are also on RAID drives as well, in case if there is a hard drive failure on there. So this is where the Keystore actually links in with High Central. So the two are used in unison for the solutions on site, and you do need both in conjunction to be able to work together for those. So benefits of using Keystore and using it on one of the storage services, you can have that centralized. You don't have to have storage in the individual shops or sites. This can be a fully centralized system. It does have a large storage capacity at the moment, that is 200 terabytes per Keystore installation. At the moment, Hikvision are working on increasing this, as the actual hardware itself that Secure Logiq can put together can go a lot higher than those 200 terabyte limits. So Hikvision R&D are currently working on increasing this per our request, so we can actually use these on a lot more solutions where they're needing the higher capacity on the storage devices. There is the increased throughput. So with the MVRs, if you're using a lot of high resolution cameras, you do generally have to back down on your bit rates or your frame rates as well, to be able to bring the cameras that you run in within the limits of the actual recorder itself. But with these kind of solutions, the capacity could be much higher, so you can run at higher resolutions and at higher bit rates on the systems as well. So they are more capable for your higher end solutions for these. And as I mentioned, we do have the different rates that can be configured depending on what the requirement is for the site as well on there. So as I mentioned, you can have the multiple remote recorders and use Keystore as your centralized backup. Keystore can also be ran as your main storage as well. You don't need to have NVRs and all the cameras can be running back to multiple Keystore servers or one large Keystore server, depending on the project requirements to meet those as well. So things that we need to consider when using the Keystore storage solution is the required storage that's needed. So you do need to take into account losses due to RAID and also the Windows file system as well, which ourselves and Secure Logiq can help with to put together solutions to meet the requirements that are needed on the site. A lot of times when tenders are released as well, they do specify the level of RAID that's required for the storage devices. So these can be set dependent on what your requirements are. They're not fixed in stone as to what we supply. We can have Secure Logiq change those depending on what's needed for your clients. You do need to take into consideration the amount of bandwidth. So this is incoming and outgoing on the actual servers themselves. We do need to look at whether or not the hardware is capable, or if we need to swap out specific areas with Secure Logiq to meet the requirements of the bandwidth that's needed on the system itself. So we do need to look at that, which can be run by ourselves or Secure Logiq, and we can come up with the best solution to meet the requirements of the site itself on there. The one other thing that I do want to mention is the level of support. So this is both from ourselves and Secure Logiq. So at Dynamic CCTV, we do now have a dedicated technical pre-sales and project support team that specifically handle all of our projects with our customers. So whether or not you need help looking at a system that's been specified, or with help with tenders or larger kind of solutions, we're here to help with those as our Secure Logiq as well. And after sales support as well, Secure Logiq have been fantastic with our customers. They've already purchased the equipment and they are fantastic to deal with. Very quick turnaround on there as well. So we're there on both the pre-sales and the after-sales side of things when it comes down to project and our 𝐂𝐸𝐸 side of it. And then these are just our different storage servers that we've got. So these can be 1U, 2U or 4U, depending on the amount of storage that's required within the actual system itself, which we can put together from those. I did mention that at the moment we are limited by the actual software rather than the storage servers, where they're limited up to 200 terabyte, but that will soon be lifted and we can start looking at the larger solutions with Keystore on there. So from Dynamic, we can put together different storage solutions that are required for the system, help with designing the network side of things as well, to make sure that you have enough capacity and throughput from all the different devices that are on the system, and to meet the actual requirements that are within your site and what your client needs. And we're always happy to help with any meetings or anything like that with your clients as well from there, and as our Secure Logiq when they're needed as well. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Ben and Robin from Secure Logiq, who are going to run through some slides and cover the different types of RAID and also the benefits of Secure Logiq hardware as well for those.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nathan. Great introduction. I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. So thank you very much to Dynamic for letting us come and join you today, and thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Ben, I'm the Sales Director at Secure Logiq, and with me I have Robin, who is one of the company co-founders. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a little bit about who we are as a company, because some of you might not have heard of us before, kind of what we do, how we go about doing it, and specifically how that ties in with what we do with Dynamic. So Dynamic are by far the HIC experts. We are the server hardware experts. And together, when you buy a solution, you get this really great level of pre-sales and post-sales support, with Nathan and his team doing the software design and us doing the hardware design, and then supporting that solution end-to-end as a joint entity. So I'm going to hand over to Robin, who's going to take you through a little bit about Secure Logiq. And then as we go through the presentation, if you've got any questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to ask in there. I'll be monitoring that. And we might not be that heavy on some of the subjects we talk about. We might reference something but don't go into detail. If you want any further details afterwards, just get in contact with Nathan, and we can either set up a one-to-one session just to go through it, or a phone call, or we can send you some documentation. So we don't have enough time to explain absolutely everything today. So Robin, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Morning, everybody. I'm Robin Hughes. I am one of the founders of Secure Logiq, as Ben said, and we're going to give you a quick rundown of what it is we do and where we sit in that electronic security arena. So, Secure Logiq, we are 10 years old this year, and all we've done for the last 10 years is develop the missing piece of the HD surveillance jigsaw. So, at Secure Logiq, all we do is we design servers, workstations, and clients specifically for video applications. So, if it's to do with video encoding, processing, analyzing, or displaying, that's what we do. And I guess the real differentiator between us and the other server guys out there is that first and foremost, we're video people. So even on the executive team, we have over 100 years of HD video experience. And that kind of means that we don't just understand the hardware we're selling you, we understand the entire system from end to end. And that's where this pre and post level support comes from. So our vision really was not to just create a new brand name, but to create a whole new product group. And that is really specialized IT hardware that's designed and optimized for IP surveillance. And our tagline is that we have the fastest performance, the biggest storage, the most resilience, and the best value. And those 4 icons, there's some you'll find that are common across our website, on our data sheets, on our product guide. The idea being that we kind of keep it simple for the integrator, so you can see how much video it can process and how much storage it's got. You don't really need to know what's inside the box. Leave that to us. So if we look at like what's been out there historically, for years people have been selecting best of breed cameras, best of breed video management software, and then like for the engine of the system, they've been selecting a server from one of the big boys who don't really know much about video. So Dell, HP, Lenovo, they're all great companies, big turnovers, nice profit margins, but they're not doing R&D for surveillance. They don't have a video department. You can't go to them with a system design and say, I've got 100 1080p cameras recording at 12 images per second for a month. What do I need? You have to go with them with a specification. So what they do offer is fantastic post-sales support. So once they've sold you a server, they will turn up to site within 4 hours and fix it if it breaks. But the guy that turns up doesn't know anything about video either, so doesn't really know how important it is to preserve your licenses or how important that video archive you spent that ton of money on is. So, whilst they offer great support, they're in and out. But at Secure Logiq, we do all of that. So we say, don't come to us with a specification, come to us with your system design. We'll design the best hardware for the application. We'll build it for you, I guess quite uniquely for our industry. Once we've sold it to you, we'll support it as well. So we are the only manufacturer who will provide an end-to-end service and support the server we've built once we've sold it to you. So looking at those icons one by one, fastest performance. Well, when I joined Secure Logiq, we were saying we could do servers at 4,000 megabits per second, when a typical IT-centric server could do about between 250 and 500 megabits per second. How do we do that? Well, as I mentioned before, we're video people. We have an intrinsic knowledge of all the video management softwares out there and how they work. So we work closely with those VMS manufacturers. But really, when we were saying we were doing 4,000 megabits per second and other people were doing 400, a lot of people started saying, prove it. And one of the things you'll find about Secure Logiq is a lot of our intellectual property comes from the software products behind the hardware. So one of the early products we developed was something called Logical Benchmark. And Logical Benchmark started life as a camera replicator for IP cameras. So in the old days, we used to use a video distribution amp, put one signal in, get 48 out, but that product didn't exist for IP CCTV, so we developed one. So Logical Benchmark will allow us to take, let's say, a 2 megapixel camera and a 5 megapixel camera and a 20 megapixel camera, and then within the software we can say, I've got 20 of those, 45 megs, 30 20 megs, and 200 analog encoded cameras, and we can create a virtual IP CCTV system of any size, create that load, throw it at the server, and that allows us to tweak it and understand how the software is interacting with the hardware, which allows us to not just prove we can do more with a lot less boxes, it also allows us to prove our leading throughput figures.
So it's just worth noting here that that bit of software Robin's talking about, that's what we use to do our R&D. So in conjunction with Dynamic, we have used that bit of software on our hardware to prove that our hardware works with the Hike Central solution. And obviously that's how we demonstrate that we can get a lot more cameras on our servers than you can put on an NVR. So if you're stacking multiple NVRs up on a project, there's a really good value proposition there to actually switching over to a server, because you need one server to do the same job as 4 or 5 different NVRs.
On to resilience. So one of the other advantages of using a server-based hardware over a DVR or NVR is the fact that servers are designed to run 24/7 high throughput. There is nothing more data intensive than video, other than multiple streams of HD video. So us guys, we are big data. So we got to build stuff that's resilient and hardy enough to handle it. So just to make this clear, we don't put a badge on anyone else's product. All Secure Logiq product is handmade from the ground up in Croydon, South London, using only enterprise components. And in order to provide that best level of mission critical resilience, we build everything. Quite happy to preload the Hike Central software and licenses for you. We will soak and load test the equipment before it's dispatched. So if we say that a server is good for 1,000 megabits per second, we'll throw 3,000 megabits per second at it for 24 hours just to make sure it can handle everything that's going through. And quite often that's when you pick up the weird and wonderful component failures. As Nathan touched on earlier, all of our hardware features a product called 𝐂𝐨𝐫𝐸𝐨, which essentially is a health monitoring and alerting utility that simply raises an alarm if there's anything going wrong with our equipment. And also all of our products feature something called IPMI, which is essentially, it's a way for my engineers to remote in and diagnose problems remotely. And it's one of the reasons we've had a near zero failure rate from day one of production. So a real quick look at those resilience levels. So quite often our competitors, the front page of the datasheet will be the specification of the unit, and the back page will be all of the optional extras you can add to make it a mission critical resilient unit. But with Secure Logiq, we decided that we're going to add in all of those additional resilience layers from day one, just to make sure that your system is up and running and stable and all of the time. So just a few of those things. We use RAID to suit the application. I'm not going to go into much detail because Ben's going to cover RAID shortly. But essentially, the more hard drives we've got, the more failover drives we have. And the reason for that is that your hard drive is the most likely thing to fail in a server. It's a spinning disk after all. All of our enterprise products have a dual redundant power supply, and that's hot swap. That means that anyone with little to no knowledge of IP CCTV or IT hardware can actually pull a broken one out and push a new one in, and it rebuilds into the system automatically. We've always separated the operating system and the applications, so that will be Hike Central, onto separate solid state drives. So solid state drives aren't really suitable for recording video, but they're really fast and efficient for running the applications and running the operating system, so Windows. And in all of our enterprise products, we have 2 solid state drives in RAID 1. So that means if one fails, it doesn't affect system performance. Probably one of the most important components in a server-based system is the RAID card. It has 2 utilities. Number one is resilience, and the other one is allowing us to get all of that extra throughput you need on large camera systems. And in the IT world, it's not common to battery back that RAID card, but it's really important in CCTV. So the reason is that we're processing a huge amount of information, and the RAID card is a good level RAID card. It's got a buffer that stores all the information before it distributes it to the hard drives. So if you battery back that buffer, if you lose power, it will save the information in there that you need to put on the drives. So when the power is restored, it distributes that information and doesn't leave any empty spaces on the hard drive, which is where you quite often lose your archive through to fragmentation. And then we touched on IPMI, which is basically a great way to support a product remotely. Even in the event you've lost your operating system, we can still dial in and rebuild the server remotely. So on to biggest storage. As Ben and Nathan alluded to earlier, with the Keystore, we're currently limited to 200 terabytes of storage in a single server. But at Secure Logiq, we can put 1.2 petabytes of storage in a single server. And that's really why we're getting Hikvision to try and change that. The reason being that if you're limiting yourself to 100 cameras, you're never going to need more than 200 terabytes in the UK. But if you can do 1,000 cameras on a single server, which isn't something we recommend, but you can, then you need a lot more storage on that server to get your 30 days. So within Secure Logiq solutions, whenever you see a storage number on the icon, that is the usable storage after RAID. So we've taken into account all of the redundant disks we're using for resilience. All of our hard drives are hot swapped. So when you look at other manufacturers' premium servers, quite often to get the big storage sizes, some of the hard drives are internal. And what that means is if you have a problem with those drives, you need to pull the server out of the rack, you need to take the lid off, you need to identify the broken drive, you need to anti-static yourself and swap the drive, and it's quite a palaver. So on Secure Logiq servers, all of our hard drives are hot swap, which means anyone can ping one out and put a replacement in. And because we have those additional storage amounts, it gives us a few advantages. Number one, we can have less compression, so higher image quality, we can have faster frame rates, or we can do those longer archive times without having additional boxes. And the less boxes you have, the less power, the less rack space, and quite often the lower the cost.
So we're going to just briefly touch on RAID levels here, but it's worth noting that we do have a full RAID presentation that takes about half an hour, and it actually explains how RAID works. So what we've got on the screen is the logical interpretation of RAID. It's not the technical interpretation though. So with our 1U servers, they come by default in RAID 5. So RAID 5 is one disk resiliency. So on the screen here, you can see I've got 3 blue disks and a black disk. So the blue disks are usable storage and the black disk is essentially the RAID. And like I said, that's not technically how it works, but it's how you can represent it graphically. So all of our 1U servers come in RAID 5 by default, and so we can do up to 48 terabytes after RAID. When we move on to our 2U servers, we've gone from having 4 drives to 12 drives in the unit. And so our company policy is that for every 10 disks inside a server, you have 1 resiliency drive. So now we have 12 disks inside the server, so we're going to go to 2 resiliency drives because we've gone over the 10 limit. So here you can see I've got all of the blue disks, which are usable storage. I have the black disk, which is the RAID. And now I have a red disk, and the red disk is our hot spare. What this does is, it means that if any drive in the system were to fail, the system would automatically take the red drive, put it in the place of the failed disk, and it would start to rebuild the system. The reason this is important is the time that the server is under the heaviest load is when it's in its failed state, so when a disk has failed. Because when it's failed, it's doing a lot of work in the background to try and continue writing and reading from those disks. So the quicker you can repair that disk, the better it is. And then by the time an engineer gets to site, you can just pull the failed disk out, put another one in, it then becomes the hot spare and the system's back up and running. But it means it's already rebuilding before you even understand that it's broken. And then when we go up to our 4U server, this is where you'd get the 200 terabyte Keystore unit. We use a solution called RAID 50 plus hot spare. So these are 2 RAID 5 arrays, and then there is a hot spare that is shared between them. The reason we split them in half into 2 RAID 5s is if you try to rebuild a 200 terabyte solution in one go, it would take a long time. If you've actually got 2 100 terabyte RAID arrays, it will take less than 50% of the time to rebuild them. So again, this is about getting that solution back up and running as quickly as we possibly can. If you want to know more about RAID, give Nathan a shout and we can schedule another meeting to have a chat about that. So why Secure Logiq? It should be, I think we should have got across the fact that we are absolutely the experts in our field. In the security industry, there isn't another company that has the depth and breadth of knowledge as we do. And we've got a lot of experience over the last 10 years of doing this. And then working with our partners like Dynamic, who understand the 𝐂𝐸𝐕 VMS as well as they do, allows us to just push our solution and our design on one step. So something that isn't hardware related that I'm going to talk about is actually system design. So system design is probably the most important part of any security solution. And the reason is because if you don't get the design right before you sell it, it's not possible to get it right after you've sold it. You know, the design has to be right from day one. So a couple of things that I want to touch on before I show you how we do design is performance requirements. So with all servers, you need a performance requirement, and these are 2 numbers. You need the amount of storage you're going to put in the server, and you need the amount of data that you're going to throw at the server. So you get the storage by calculating your average bandwidth. In this example, it's 3 megabits per second. That will eventually work out to be terabytes after you times it by a number of days. And to get your throughput or your performance, you have to work out your peak bandwidth, which is 12 megabits per second. If you design your server based on 3 megabits per second for performance, when the fire alarm goes off and the beacons are flashing and there's flames and the emergency services turn up, your server will simply stop recording video because it won't be able to handle the throughput. So we always take this into account, and we design worst case scenario, but we sell storage for the average scenario. Another thing to mention, again, this is a bit of a bigger topic than I'm going to go through right now, is storage losses. But essentially, if you were to take 72 10 terabyte hard drives, you'd have 720 terabytes. After you've applied RAID, you'd lose 6 of those drives, so you've had 660 terabytes. However, you can't use all 660 of those terabytes. You're going to lose some storage to something called storage losses. And it's approximately 10%. And it's the difference between how a hard drive manufacturer calculates hard drives and how the operating system reads the hard drives. So right click my computer, click properties, and you'll see that there is 2 numbers. There's one number and then there's a number in brackets. The numbers will not be the same. The number that you see is usable. The number in brackets is actually existing amount of storage. So we have to factor this into account. And then I've got this example here, which is 5 different storage calculators. And as you can see from my ticks and crosses and question marks, and I'm not going to run through them now, it takes too long. But as you can see, none of them actually give you all of the information that you need. So when you're doing a storage calculation, you have to understand what that calculator is actually telling you. So we've used these 5 plus another 15 different storage calculators that we've analyzed. And on each one of them, they're all fine to use, but you've got to understand the number that it's spitting you out. Because if it's giving you the raw storage number, you need to take account of the losses. But if it's giving you the loss number, you don't need to take account of it. And again, with the throughput, is the number average or is the number peak throughput? And this is why we have an internal design house. So you can take your design requirements to Nathan's team, and then between us and Nathan's team, we will work out what you need for that solution. So we offer 3 levels of design. The first one is generic documentation. So the document on the left is explaining storage types. The top one is a Keystore unit. The others are different types of storage. We mainly see them in the Middle and Far East. And the document on the right-hand side is explaining a failover solution. And again, there are dozens of different interpretations of failover solutions. So it's always good to pick the right document and say, yeah, this is the one the customer wants. Phase 2 of our design is customer-specific drawings. So this is a drawing about a control room upgrade. So you can see like the server stuff is at the top of the screen. It's kind of irrelevant. What we're actually doing here is we've got an 8-way video wall, 4 client positions, and then 3 other positions somewhere else, and a remote site with a workstation. So we're drawing out how this looks. What type of video? How many monitors do you have? How much video on the monitor? So here we've got quad screens and a map and an alarm screen, etc. So we go into a lot of detail to make sure that we understand what you're actually going to be doing with that solution. This is a server example. So here at the top, we've got a management server, and then we've got some storage servers. And if I just zoom in on the storage servers, we go into right-hand side is network connections. Then we have the physical equipment. Then we have the server part numbers. And then in the middle of the screen, we have got network connectivity, speed, number, and type of connections, the amount of heat that's put out by the unit to calculate air conditioning, the power by the unit to calculate UPS requirements, and how many kettle leads you're going to need. And on the left-hand side, we have these part numbers for upgrades that are going inside the unit. So it's quite a lot of detail that goes into the design. And then if you've got a really big project or you really want to impress, we have our level 3 design, which is a full technical submission. So I appreciate you won't be able to read this document, although you're welcome to have a copy of it. But we have an introduction to Secure Logiq, top right-hand side, the requirements from the end customer, the middle section, installation recommendations, the solution overview with some pictures of how it's going to work. The colorful Excel chart is a list of all of the cameras, one at a time, all of their settings. Again, some more solution information. And then the bottom row, those 7 locations, they are 7 independent storage locations. So we've taken the relevant cameras, applied it to the location, and we've given 7 different calculations. And then we have some other information. And all of our design services come back with our design guarantee. If we've designed it, we guarantee the solution. So if you ask for 31 days and you're only getting 28, we'll make up that at our own expense. If you wanted to put 200 cameras on the server, but it maxes out at 150, we'll make that up at our expense as well. So it's all included, and our design service is completely free. All you need to do is give Nathan's team or any contact at Dynamic, give them the information that is required for the solution. We will then design that together, and then we'll provide the documentation back to you. The documentation normally takes 1 or 2 days to put together, depending on the size of the project. So just moving on to our product overview. So working in conjunction with Dynamic, we have a specific product set that is only sold through Dynamic for HIC Central. And so you can see it on the screen. We have the web server and the streaming server. We have 2 versions of those. We have the one that you can see on the screen, which is our small form factor server. And we also have a full enterprise server, which looks a little bit more like the one that says 64 terabytes on it. We then have our 3 Keystore servers, so 1U, 2U, and 4U Keystore servers. Again, a massive range of storage types on there. I think the smallest we've done is 8 terabytes, and the biggest we've done is 200, because that's the limitation of HIC Central. And then we've got a few different client machines as well. I think it started off with 2. I think we've actually now got 4 different types of client machines. And again, their performance criteria are there designed to meet the HIC requirements, but actually they go far above and beyond the HIC requirements. So whereas the HIC documentation might say this can do 9 channels of 9 video streams, actually in actual testing, ours do significantly more than that. And we're always working on this. So as things are changing at the HIC end, and Dynamic are working directly with HIC to add new software features and new hardware features, we are then dynamically changing our product range in order to match that, and then obviously going through and doing the testing and the R&D. We've mentioned a product called Health Check a couple of times. Now, I don't have the Health Check demo ready for today, but it's well worth looking at. The Health Check demo is an online service. And essentially, we are monitoring all of the components that are inside our units, both the servers and the client machines. And we are providing a real-time feedback to a graphical interface that shows you whether they're online, if they've got any warnings with them, if they've got any critical errors. So if a power supply has gone in one of our servers, a little icon turns red and a system tree turns red. And you can actually load this up in your office, maybe at your service desk or whoever takes your service calls, and you can see it in real time. Or you can give it to the customer can have it in their premises. Or if you're a smaller organization, you don't have a dedicated service desk, we can also use it to send out emails or SMS messages. So rather than turning up every 6 months and finding out that something has failed, what we actually do is we proactively tell you with an email, this hard drive on this server, on this site has just failed, you need to go and replace it. Obviously, remembering if you've got that hot spare, it will automatically take over. But it's providing a level of proactive maintenance to the server solution, because servers aren't MVRs or DVRs. They do need a little bit of TLC on them. But they come with this huge performance increase and all of the value add that we've talked about, in addition. So that's it from our presentation. Back over to Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Ben and Robin. I think that was great there. Covered a lot there, and I know Ben did mention the logical health check Pro. Obviously, we didn't put that in this webinar as demo, but for any customers that do want to look that more in depth and what you can actually achieve with the software, which it is brilliant. We've used it, and we've got a few customers that are using it as well. Obviously, the HIC Central software does have its own built-in one, but within the Logical Health Check Pro, it's focusing specifically on your server hardware, and it prevents you from getting calls from customers. You will actually already know most of the times before the actual customer does. So it does give you that benefit, which we could possibly look at showing our customers at a later date as a demo.
If anyone wants to see Logical Health Check, it's literally a 10-15 minute demonstration. It's a real live demonstration on our live system. And then once you've seen the demonstration, our product manager can give you a login and you can go in and play with it yourself. The servers are just located in our office, so you can fiddle with them and try and break it if you'd like. It's not a problem. Someone else will fix it. But yeah, it's 10-15 minutes. Again, just ask Nathan and he can arrange that with us. And we can just do a one-on-one call, or we can do a one-to-many call. It's up to you.
Yeah, that's great. I know that we haven't had many Q&As come through, but I have seen a lot of emails going to our inboxes. People that have been on the webinar, because a lot of people do want to know more stuff in detail, so they have been focusing more on the email side of things with these. But I'd just like to thank Ben and Robin for taking the time today. It's been a great partnership working with them, and as ever, it is growing exponentially for us, being brilliant to work with. But thank you both for taking your time today to join us for this webinar.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you both. Thanks, and I'll see everyone on the next webinar in about 2 weeks' time. But thank you, and take care and stay safe.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.